What's a non-obvious sign that somebody is wealthy? Didn't realize how wealthy some casual acquaintances were until we were at a nicer bar at a resort, and as soon as the staff saw their credit card they started getting really good service. It was a nice place and they were great to everyone, but suddenly this couple were like the only ones on the room. So apparently the color of your credit card, which I don't think is always a giveaway, but people in some industries just probably know rich person credit cards. I have a Sallie Mae student loan cashback card and that didn't get me anything. Many super high-end cards are heavy. I'm talking it's made of metal kind of heavy. It's pretty obvious. Service industry worker here. We definitely notice the really nice cards, since the ridiculously heavy metal ones slide so nicely and are clearly different than the kinds us normal job having folk have. Certain cards from whatever companies have insane minimum dollar amounts to open, or maintain, or have an insane fee that only the rich can ignore. So yes, of course this signals that the card holder must be filthy rich. However, these people shouldn't be treated any better than any other customer. Back in my college days we had a friend who came from a pretty wealthy family, but you couldn't tell because he lived in the dorms like everyone else. Except anytime someone suggested we go to a restaurant or to a game or show, he never asked about how much it cost or said he'd have to check his bank account like other people would say. Then one day he casually mentioned his father was going to bring him back to campus in their helicopter. A professor friend of mine asked a student if she needed an extension because she had to make an emergency trip home to Europe. She replied that it wasn't an emergency, her parents just wanted to see her, and that it wasn't that inconvenient. They sent the family jet to pick her up from her pretty rural school. Went to college with a guy like this. He was pretty low-key, but would always have money when he needed it. Someone hit his car in the parking lot and he had a new one the next week. Someone stole his golf clubs. He was on the golf team, and he drove to the pro shop and dropped $2,500 on a set while he waited for his custom clubs to be sent to him. That sort of thing. I went to school with a guy who didn't even know what your dad did for work, only that he flew from Florida to the Bahamas, and Cayman Islands weekly. The guy barely studied, and got an allowance of $1,000 a week that he spent almost entirely on weed and Adderall so he could stay up all night and play EverQuest. He was the best sweet mate ever. 24 hours a day you could knock on his door and ask if he had any weed and he would load up the biggest bowl and hand it to you. Reminds me at this joke about the Saudi prince who gets sent to Europe to study there at a university. One day he writes in a letter to his father, "I must confess though, that I feel a bit ashamed. Every day, when I arrive at university in my golden Ferrari, I see my fellow students get out of the bus or the tram." Skip forward a couple of days, then the letter of his father arrives. "Dear son, we can't afford a member of our glorious family being ashamed. This would mean shame for the whole family. You will find a check about $1 million in this letter. Go and get yourself a bus and a tram ASAP." Spend money to save time versus spending time to save money. Had a roommate in first year who rarely lived in the dorm but had food delivered daily that tasted like it was picked out and cooked the same morning. Well, we invite him to Street Paddy's Day and I notice his watch, to which I drop a "That's really cool. Mind I see it." Half drunk, I saw the watch face and asked him about the symbol. Mind you, this watch was really heavy as I am holding it, and he says it's the family sigil. I was holding a 23K gold watch and he turned out to be part of the Qatari royal family. Dude could easily stunt on one of us. So I guess it's the small things in their lifestyle and how modestly someone can wear $100,000 on their wrist. I went to university with two girls from Qatar. They seemed all normal like the rest of us until we found out that they each had a maid escorting them abroad for the duration of their studies. Chaperones, actually. They rarely or never talk about money in everyday conversations. There's a saying that there's an inverse correlation between how wealthy someone is and how often they mention money, but it's not that easy or obvious to gauge how often someone actually talks about money without interacting with them a lot. From what I've learned, If they dress like the Monopoly man and wear a monocle, they're rich. Everyone else is in jail. From what I've learned, if they dress like the Monopoly man and wear a monocle, they're pretending to be rich. The actual rich folk wear subtle high-quality clothing, or look homeless. The trick to being wealthy isn't how much you make or spend, but how much you save, invest. Quite a few people who grow up with wealth conceal it. If they don't want you to know, you won't. During college I was dating a man for the better part of a year before finding out that his parents' residence was an entire floor of a fashionable Upper East Side Manhattan building. Their summer house was in Paris. One of his worries in life was about attracting parasites, so he had anticipated anything that could give away how much money was in his background. Occasionally it was useful to tip that hand. His mother had worn her mink coat when she co-signed his apartment lease. He spent modestly on dates and wore ordinary clothes. He had put a lot of thought into looking like a middle-class guy. I knew paying bills wasn't a problem for him, but he was kind of embarrassed when he revealed what his situation actually was. I had a friend like this during my medical internship. First year of residency. I had no idea she was incredibly rich until she had us all over to her house one evening for a residency function. Her house that she lived in by herself. That was an entire house, in San Francisco, in a very expensive area, that she owned outright and had remodeled from the studs. That's when I realized she had a lot of money in her family. Wealthy people worry about time. The only resource and commodity that doesn't replenish. Edit, I'm not wealthy by any stretch, but I'm slowly starting to value my time more than my money. I think it's a healthier way to be. Time enjoyed is not wasted. This is absolutely the case. They're not as worried about how much it costs to have a landscaping company come take care of their yard. They're more concerned with how much time it will take to do it themselves. They don't flaunt it, don't talk about money, and never complain about money problems. Money talks, wealth whispers. Their kids have no pressure to get regular, middle-class jobs. Some families I know have 3-4 kids, and are very proud. This one is an artist, that one is 40 and getting a PhD. The other acts and directs local theater. It's a subtle status symbol to support your kid in whatever. I have a minor panic attack. How does that pay the bills? But it doesn't have to. I don't see a lot of designer purses or granite countertops, but a lot of art, and every piece, there's an accompanying story about being in that country, or knowing that artist stayed in their house, etc. Yeah, I have wealthy customers at my job and their children come in sometimes. The attitude of not needing to work at all is a unique one to me, haha, and stands out a lot. I'm thinking about getting a job here or thinking about volunteering for / traveling to _ for me. I don't think about these things. They are major investments and life decisions for me. I have to know those things. I work at a luxury car dealership, so I see my fair share of wealthy people. The one thing that stands out between them and regular people is how carefree and nice they are. I crashed a lady's car once, pretty badly, and all she did was laugh and say, "The important thing is that you're not hurt." I was astonished, since I'm used to my mom being so frantic and, frankly, abusive to employees if even the slightest thing is wrong. They don't necessarily get bent out of shape and treat the help poorly, but they also are very clear about what they want and will go elsewhere if you don't give it to them. I worked in a luxury dealership for a few years, and the thing I noticed more than anything was how willing they were to walk away over very silly things. I can't get the saddle interior with the carbon accents without special ordering. I wanted this car for my ski trip next weekend, guess I'll get something else. I have a childhood best friend who's very wealthy, as in, he has a trust fund and will never need to work. It wasn't until I was an adult that I knew myself, that's how discreet he and his family are. He decided to join the army for the adventure, and did 2 tours in Afghanistan as infantry. He was a leader, hard worker, and in a couple of instances even a little brave. His friends in his unit, excuse my not knowing military lingo, didn't have a clue what his background was. Anyways, Over the time they were there, they'd discuss their plans for when they got back to civilian life, and my friend would consistently tell them he had no plan whatsoever. His plan was to do nothing. They'd question it and he'd insist. Nothing. Finally, some of them are getting out shortly, and after about half a decade of knowing him, they really pressed him on what he was really going to do when he got out. What would he do for money? What jobs would he apply for? He finally told them he wasn't kidding about doing nothing. He's rich. He was just going to go back to being rich. Sometimes it's right in front of your face.